Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Google Digital Garage for the session Get Started with Analytics. Now, before we jump into some really exciting content for today's session, there's a couple of housekeeping tips that we're going to have to cover. So we are all aligned and on the same page, and we're going to make this as interactive as possible. First and foremost, if you're having any problems hearing me or seeing me today, please go ahead and refresh your browser. It normally irons out any potential problems. Next up, we'd love you to get involved with the chats. We love questions, we love comments, we love emojis, we love more questions. In order for you to get involved with today's chat, you would be required to have a YouTube account. Relatively easy to get set up. Once you're all set up, you'll be able to fire over those questions to myself and Anthea, which I'll be introducing very, very shortly. Quickly, if you're viewing us through a desktop or a laptop, the chat will be located on the far right-hand side. If you're viewing us through a mobile device, there's a very good chance that the chat will be just below us. Next up, this particular live training is part of a broader offering from the Google Digital Garage. So I hugely encourage you to click in the link in the description below. It'll take you to the website and give you a plethora of information, online courses, and many, many more live webinars very similar to this one. Next up, in terms of an accessibility point of view, if you like to follow along with the closed captions, in other words, the subtitles for this live training, all you'll need to do is find the CC button. If you're viewing us through a mobile device, it will most likely be on the top right-hand side of your screen of the video. If you're viewing us through a desktop, there's a very high chance that you'll hover your mouse over the video, find the gear cog, which is normally located on the bottom right-hand side of the video. Once you tap onto that, you can have the subtitles or the closed captions, and hopefully that'll allow you to follow along just a little bit more effectively, because I tend to speak rather fast, but I'll do my very best to slow it down. But now that the housekeeping tips are out of the way, myself and Anthea, of course, we're going to introduce myself and Anthea very shortly. We love questions and queries. And most importantly, what we'd love you to do is pop into the chat and go ahead and say hi. Maybe just say hi, let us know where you're tuning in from, or share any information you feel comfortable sharing, maybe what you'd like to get out of today's session. With that being said, let's do a quick introduction. My name is Daryl. I'm a digital trainer, facilitator, and ex-seafarer. I come from a diverse background spanning various sectors across the world, including events, hospitality, sales and marketing, recruitment, learning and development, and of course, technology. I've been very, very fortunate and grateful to help many, many different businesses and charities over the last few years move forward with their business, especially through the pandemic. But now that we are out and about, how do we just generally move forward with our business? And in particular, today's session, we're going to talk about how do we get started with analytics. And analytics is going to allow you to learn more about your users, learn more about what they're doing on your page, learn so much more information that's going to allow you to start strategically creating content based off what your customers are looking for. Now, we've already got one hello from Vishal. Vishal, a big, big warm welcome to you. Anybody else that's there, go ahead and say hi. Myself and Anthea, of course, we're going to jump into next. Anthea is also a Google Digital Garage trainer, and she will be in the chat ready and waiting to answer any of your questions or your queries, and we'll be sending a couple of links your way to bookmark to jump into afterwards, so you have something actionable to jump away after today's session. But now that the housekeeping tips are out of the way, we've done a couple of introductions. Please make sure that the chat is flowing throughout today's session. And I'd like to remind you all that there is no such thing as a silly question. We welcome any questions or queries that you have. And please keep in mind that if you pop something in the chat today, that may resonate with somebody else watching today. So as much as myself and Anthea are looking to empower you with knowledge, there could be someone in the chat today that could pop something in that inspires you or motivates you or just basically gives you the information that you're looking for. But we got another one, Vishal calling all the way from India. Fantastic. Well, what are we going to be covering over the next, how much time do we have? 56 minutes. Well, we've broken it down to 3 basic steps. Number 1, we're going to jump into ask the right questions. Now, to give you a very basic approach to when it comes to Google Analytics is, I don't know if you've looked at it already or you're on your way along with Google Analytics. Actually, that'd be super interesting to know. For those who have joined today, let us know in the chat either a yes if you have used Google Analytics or no if you haven't got it set it up at all. So pop into the chat yes if you are currently using Google Analytics, and no if you've never used it before. It'd be really interesting for myself and Anthea to learn a little bit more about what's the skill level, what's the understanding of Google Analytics within the session today. So number 1, we're going to jump into ask the right questions. Now, this is really, really important because as overwhelming as the content or the data can be, by asking the right questions, we can refine our focus to get the information that we're looking for. Then we're going to go ahead and jump into learn the tools which we can use. Now, Google Analytics is just one tool that you can use. There is so many more tools and platforms that you can jump into the insights and understand more about your customers. Last but not least, we're going to jump into use data with Google Analytics. But sometimes these live trainings can be very overwhelming because they're only an hour. There's lots of information. So just to let you know that this particular live training will be available as a recording for approximately 24 hours. All you'll need to do is click on the same link that you used to join today's session. You'll be able to rewind, fast forward, and really absorb the information at your own pace. If that's still not enough, and maybe you're looking for a little bit more of a one-to-one, well, you can go ahead and jump into these free one-to-one mentoring sessions. Yes, I did say it. It is one-to-one mentoring sessions at no cost. If you're a business, a small business, or a charity within the UK, please go ahead and take down this link, which is g.co/UK mentoring. Myself, Anthea, and many other digital trainers and experts are ready and waiting to help you. Maybe it's not analytics, maybe it's social media strategy, maybe it's digital marketing strategy, maybe you need help with your website, but we are ready and waiting to help you. So please go ahead and take that link, and hopefully we'll see you in a few of those in the future. If it's not for you, please pass this link on to anyone you know who would hugely benefit from it. But let's go ahead and get started. Housekeeping tips are out of the way, introductions are out of the way. We've got a couple of yeses so far. So far, we got Vishal, excuse me. Text is a little blurry. Well, hopefully we're gonna make it a little bit bigger for you now. If it is blurry, I'd like to let everybody know sometimes when you're viewing through YouTube, you can actually change the quality of your stream. So what I'd like you to do, if your screen is currently blurry, go to the video that you're currently watching, go to the bottom right-hand side and find the gear cog, in other words, the setting icon. When you click onto the setting icon, you'll be able to change the pixel. So it could be 1080p, 720p, but see if you can raise that to HD, which is going to be high definition. That may be able to improve the visibility of the slides today. Hopefully that will be helpful, but let's go ahead and jump into asking the right questions. We got a yes for you from Anthony, who's using Google Analytics. Becky's not using, Vishal's not using. Perfect. So we're going to approach this from a very basic standpoint to get you all set up for success. But before we jump into Google Analytics, I think it's really, really important that we have a framework. And this framework is going to allow us to start approaching Google Analytics from a more, what should I say, more targeted aspect, instead of just being overwhelmed with the information that Google Analytics has to provide. So let's break it down. We have, what is my objective, which we're going to be jumping into very shortly. Then we're going to think about what questions do we need to address. Next but not least, we're going to jump into where do we get that information from? And then last but not least, what do we do with that information? These 4 steps, we're going to break these down throughout today's session. But number one, we're going to jump into what is my objective. That is the main focus. Why are you using Google Analytics? What's your business goals? How do we line them up? Well, let's jump straight into that. So the number one is going to be, what is my objective? In other words, what is your objective? What is your objective? Why are you thinking about using Google Analytics? And if you are using Google Analytics, what is the purpose? What is the objective? Now, to give you a couple of examples of what I mean by objectives is, number one, could be maybe you want to tell more people about your business. I think we all would like to do that at some point, pretty much on a daily basis. Or maybe you're looking to sell more of your products or services. Again, you could say, well, Daryl, I'm looking to tell more people about my business. I'm also trying to sell my products. I'm also trying to identify the most valuable customers. I'm also trying to find new ways to engage with previous customers. Well, that's all good and well, but when it comes to approaching Google Analytics and getting the right information, ask the right questions and have an objective. So let's say, for example, now we're going to jump in to tell more people about my business. We're going to have that as almost a mindset jumping into Google Analytics. But don't cloud your judgment and your intake of data by mixing all of these objectives all together. Hopefully that message is coming across, that you need to choose an objective of what you are trying to do. Once you've got that, you will then be able to move forward to the next step. And again, this process can be done multiple times, but try not to spread yourself too thin. Speak slowly. I will do my very best, Vishal. Please make sure that you have the subtitles on as well to help you follow along. But I will definitely slow it down for everybody to follow along a little bit more effectively. So, objectives. When we're jumping into Google Analytics, choose an objective of what you would like to do. And for the purposes of today's session and the purpose of interaction, I'd like you to pop into the chat, what is your current objective? Now, it could be one of those four that you see on screen right now, or it could be completely different. But share it with myself and Anthea, and we might be able to make this a little bit more relevant to you. Hop into the chat. What is your objective at the moment? Once you've defined that objective, we're then going to jump into what questions do I need to address? Once we have that objective, there is a few questions that we can start asking ourselves to overcome this challenge or achieve this objective. So let's break it down to the REEN framework. Now, this is when I recommend that you all take out a pen and paper or a separate digital document where you can start writing these down. But we're going to use the REEN framework to help you approach your growth on Google Analytics or your understanding of your Google Analytics. Number one, R, which is going to be for reach. In other words, how is your audience and how are you able to find, how are your customers able to find you online? So when you have your online presence, how are you finding that reach? Next up is going to be the engage phase, as once they do find you, are they finding what they need? So once they find your website, are they going to the products? Are they buying what they want? And then they're finding what they want. So reach, where we get our customers from. Engage, once they're on your website, what are they finding and are they finding what they look for? Next up is going to be the activate stage, which is, are they actually booking? Are they buying? Are they converting? Now, conversions don't necessarily have to be purchase related, but are they doing what you would like them to do? Next up is going to be the nurture phase, which is very, very difficult for many people to incorporate. And a lot of companies and charities and businesses overlook this one. So when it comes from a nurture phase, you can start understanding how many of your visitors are new users and how many of them are returning visitors. And if you can start having those two metrics, you'll start to be able to understand a little bit more about how are you retaining your customers. Now, you don't have to memorize this in detail, but what I would like you to do is write down REEN, reach, engage, activate, and nurture. And the reason that I'm mentioning this is going to be applicable when we apply it later on in today's session. Perfect. We've got a couple of great interaction within the chat so far. So you looking to, Vishal, improve my working experience and expertise in digital world. Perfect. That's your objective right now. But when we're thinking about Google Analytics and as a business standpoint, what is your objective? That's a good objective. Becky, understand who our website is reaching so that we can increase reach. Becky, I love that. And we're going to show you a couple of cheat codes on how to access that. But let's break this REEN framework into some questions. So let's jump into Becky, for example, who's looking to understand who our website is reaching so that we can increase reach. Well, we're going to think about a couple of reach questions. So the reach questions would be, how are people finding me online? Once we have these questions, we can then use these questions to dive into Google Analytics and get the answers. Another one's, what are my target customers searching for? So if you're looking to get more reach and you're trying to understand more about how your reach is, then think about these two questions. And again, we're going to jump into engage, which is going to be a couple of questions on, once they do find you, once they do get to your website, what are they doing on your webpage? Are they spending more time on a specific page? But the questions would be, what are people engaging with once they find me online? Are they staying on the landing page and just moving their mouse around and just checking out a few products? Or are they diving into the actual product pages? Next up, which of my online communications are people engaging with the most? So we started to tie in the reach with questions, the engage with questions, and now it's going to be the activate with questions. Now, the activate phase is which channels are driving bookings. In other words, once we thought about the reach in terms of where are our customers coming from, are they coming from paid advertisements? Are they coming from social media? Are they coming from organic search engine optimization? In other words, organic listings. Then of those people that are coming from those channels, how many of them are actually booking or buying or converting? And who is my customer? In other words, your customers are going to be the ones that purchase from you. So you can really start to target and understand the people that come to your page, learn more about them. And of those, how many actually bought from you? Next up is going to be nurture, not necessarily just bought, but converted. Next up is going to be the nurture. Again, many businesses and charities overlook this one, but it is very, very important for any business to make sure that we are nurturing and caring for our customers and also understanding more about how we are retaining our customers. How many of our customers are coming back? Can we build brand ambassadors? Can we build up stronger connections with those customers? Maybe build up a partnership. So there's lots of avenues that we can jump into, but the first and the main purpose of the very first part of the session, which was asking the right questions. You may be thinking, Darryl, why are we talking about all of this? I came here for Google Analytics. Well, what we're doing right now is providing you a framework in which you can approach your Google Analytics. Now, we're going to be jumping into a couple of questions very shortly, so feel free to pop any questions or queries within the chat. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but this is the time for questions. Now, we will be pausing a little bit later for a few more questions. And as mentioned, please don't be shy, and there is no such thing as a silly question. And Vishal, I really, really hope that I'm keeping the speed of my voice at a reasonable pace and everybody finds this enjoyable and can understand it clearly. So don't see any questions as of yet, but what myself and Anthea and the team would love to know is we'd love to know your feedback. So we're going to be sharing this link with you a few times throughout today's session, and we would love it if you could fill out this feedback. It would probably take you about 2 to 5 minutes to fill out, and it would mean the world to us. And by me asking you for that feedback to learn more, I'm going to stress the importance of that right at the end. So to understand how important it is for us to consistently ask for feedback, I'll highlight the significant importance of that at the very end of today's session. But now we jump into number 2, which is which tools to use. We've now jumped into a framework, the REEN framework, reach, engage, activate, and nurture. We're going to use this at the end of today's session. So hopefully you've written that down, and it's a great way to approach your Google Analytics. So number 1, we spoke about what is my objective. Then we spoke about what questions do I need to address those objectives. Now what we need to do is think about where do I get that information from? This is probably the one that we've all been waiting for. But we don't want to be completely focused on Google Analytics. We often want to offer the fact that there is many other ways to obtain information from your customers. It could be social insights. Now, pop into the chat right now, either with your favorite emoji. I'll actually pop in my favorite emoji right now. I don't know if it's favorite, but let's just put a big smiley face. Let's put a big smiley face. If you are currently on social media, pop your favorite emoji into the chat. And the reason I do that is mainly because I probably will get a plethora of images, emojis coming in because we live in the social media era. And if you are on social media, I do recommend that many of you, from a business standpoint, turn any of your personal profiles that you're using for your business and change them to a professional. The reason being, you'll then get access to your insights. But then you can also use organic search, which we're going to jump into a tool very shortly about how you can monitor your website on the internet. Then, of course, the tools that we can use from your website standpoint by connecting with Google Analytics. And last, we can use something called paid search. Thank you, Anthea. Definitely on social media. By the way, you should all be popping in your emojis because you're currently on social media as we speak. We are currently on YouTube. So pop in your favorite emoji just out of fun. Next up, we're going to jump into social media insights. So social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube offer page insights where you can see how people are engaging with your profile. But you can also learn, for example, on Instagram, if you jump into the insights, you can learn more about what time of day are your followers mostly online. If you can learn more about that, we can start learning more about when do we post. Oh, Becky, I absolutely love that emoji. So social media insights, if you'd like to learn more about social media strategy, make sure you click in the link in the description below. There's another great live training. Well, there's 2 great live trainings called Writing for Social Media and Social Media Strategy. And we'd love to welcome you all back to that. If you'd like to go a little bit more targeted into social insights, make sure you book into those one-to-one sessions and we're able to guide you a little bit more effectively and a little bit more specifically. Then we're going to go jump into Google Search Console. Now, I cannot stress the importance of how amazing this tool is. I still can't believe it's free. So if you don't have Google Search Console, let's give you a quick definition of what it is. And in a basic layman's terms, if you have a website and you've publicly posted it on the internet and you want to start learning about how does your website performing on Google, well, this is the tool that you're going to use. Google Search Console, I kind of like to think of it as like a baby monitor for your website on the internet. So in other words, you can monitor the performance of how your website is performing on Google. It's also going to give you any prompts to any critical alerts or give you any ways to improve your website. Not only that, let's say, for example, somebody's searching for a business somewhere similar to yours. They type in a couple of keywords into Google. They start searching on Google about what they're looking for. And then all of a sudden, your link pops up. It could be on the second page, third page, first page, wherever your current page is. They then click onto your web page and go to your website. Google Search Console is going to go, hey, hi, somebody just found your website using these keywords, and keywords are incredibly important to connect us on in the internet. Should we say you've got your business, you've got your customer, you've got a search engine, and those keywords are going to be the joining factors. So that's going to help you with Google Search Console. Highly recommend you get that set up. You can either get it set up through your domain or through your URL. If you get any struggles setting this up, please go ahead and book into a free one-to-one mentoring session. Next up, if you are a brick and mortar, in other words, a physical location, and you want to get some more visibility on Google, well, then I highly, highly recommend you create a Google business profile at no cost, by the way. But please keep in mind, this is very much for to drive face to face. In other words, these Google business profiles are designed to drive footfall to your physical location. Once you've got that set up, the way I like to think about it, it's kind of like a user-friendly social media platform that gives you the insights or the information, the core information that your customers are looking for. In other words, phone calls, directions, descriptions, photos, images, directions, and lots more information. So if you do have a brick and mortar, in other words, a physical location, I highly recommend you set up your Google Business Profile. Once you have set up your Google Business Profile, you will then be able to dive into the insights of that profile. Now, don't worry about squinting and trying to see what's on screen. Essentially, we have a pie graph, and that pie graph is going to have some green and some blue. Now, the majority of that graph is going to be blue, which in other words, people on this specific Google Business Profile is finding them through discovery. So the blue is discovery. What do I mean by discovery? Well, essentially, when you jump onto Google and you start searching for products or services, you may jump into Google, type in the service. You don't find the perfect business, but you'll start searching through the businesses to eventually find one. And then you click onto it. That would be discovery. However, if somebody finds you directly, maybe they've gone to Google and typed in your address exactly. So that would be direct. Now, again, Google Business Profile is focused for brick and mortar, in other words, physical locations to help drive footfall and provide valuable information to your customers to hopefully get them the information that they're looking for. And then you'll be able to jump into the insights, of course. But the one that we've all been waiting for is going to be the Google Analytics. Now, Google Analytics is a tool completely for free to get set up. It is a free tool, probably one of the most popular analytics tools around there. And you could monitor every single click on your website if you wanted to. We will look a little bit closer at Google Analytics after we've answered a few more of your questions. But I wanted to get through the majority of the first part by understanding the tools that are available to you. We've jumped into the Ream framework. And what we're going to do now is actually jump into how do we get set up with Google Analytics? What are the things that we need to think about to get the setup and get you set up for success? Please do keep in mind that Google Analytics is going through quite a bit of a transition, and I'll be talking about that transition very, very shortly. For those who have not set up Google Analytics and have not got it set up at all, this won't concern you as much. For anybody that's in the background watching this today and have already got Google Analytics set up, please know that there is going to be a transition for something called UA, which is Google Analytics Universal Analytics, which will stop and be sunset on the 1st of July. From the 1st of July onwards, we will be using something called Google Analytics 4, also known as GA4. Now, it'd be interesting to know if anybody's heard any of these insights as of yet. I'm not quite sure if you have, but we'll jump into a few of those insights shortly. So let's see if there's any questions. I know Anthea is already asking in the chat if there's any questions, but anybody, if you are new to analytics and you're not quite sure about what's been discussed, please pop it into the chat. There is no such thing as a silly question. You've all entered a completely non-judgmental environment. So just want to do a quick recap of what have we covered so far. So the first part of today's session, we spoke about asking the right questions. When we ask the right questions, what we need to start with is an objective. And a few of you, Vishal and Becky, have shared your objectives. Write that down, have that as a focus. Once you have that objective, we then need to approach your analytics by using a framework, which is called the REEN framework: reach, engage, activate, and nurture. Now, what we want to do is also jump into the other insights and other places where we can learn more about our customers. So, what we spoke about social insights, which those insights will be individual and independent on each platform. Great source of insights and learning more about your customers. We also spoke about the Google Search Console. Now, the Google Search Console is going to help you monitor how your website is performing on Google. But now what we need to do is we've understood the framework, we've understood our objective, we've understood what tools are out there. Now we need to use the data with the Google Analytics to answer those questions. So let's go ahead and jump into what do I do with that information? Now, this is probably the one where most businesses and charities get so overwhelmed with, because there is so much information. And if there's so much information, we just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I want to do. Let's make it super simple. Instead of looking at this screen and be like, wow, there's just graphs and numbers and percentages and blues and light blues, don't think of it that way. Remember, when we have an objective in mind, we want to think about, how do we ask the right questions? How do we navigate through all of this information efficiently and get the information that we're looking for? Because Google Analytics can provide so much information. To list a few, it could tell you what mobile devices are they using. Are they using a desktop? How much time did they spend on this website? How long did they watch this video on this website? How many times did they click on this button? And you will get so overwhelmed with the information that Google Analytics can provide. Now, I'm pretty sure you're getting how important this is, because I've stressed it throughout the whole of the session, but don't get too overwhelmed. What we need to do first is set up your Google Analytics account. Now, in my, could be slightly biased, but how do we get set up with Google accounts? All you're going to do is you're going to jump into Google and you can type in Google Analytics. Alternatively, you can jump into your URL, in other words, your top search bar of your browser, and type in analytics.google.com. Once you've got to the website, you're then going to create your account and choose a name for that account. This is super important if you've got multiple projects or multiple businesses. By naming your account, this is going to make it a lot more easier for you to come back to. You don't want to get mixed up with businesses and analytics and different websites. So make sure you name your accounts, and then you're going to choose an industry category. Now, the reason this is important is when you choose an industry category, you will then be able to benchmark yourself against others that have been tagged within this category. So by benchmarking, you'll not be completely in the dark, and you'll be able to sort of gauge your performance, not by comparing, but by benchmarking it against others that are within this category. Super, super efficient. So go to Google Analytics, make sure you choose the name, and then choose the category. Once you have set this up, and again, I could be slightly biased, it is super easy to do. We're then going to find a way. We have Google Analytics, we have your website, but now what we need to do is we need to connect your website to the Google Analytics account, so we can start understanding what is happening on those web pages on your website. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to have to find a tracking code. Now, please keep in mind, this is currently valid if you are using Universal Analytics, but with the transition to GA4, to Google Analytics 4, this interface that you currently see will be slightly different. And in my opinion, this difference is quite wonderful in terms of usability. Again, I could be slightly biased, but it's super easy. Essentially, whether you're in UA or GA4, you want to go to the admin tab. Once you click onto the admin tab, you want to then go find your tracking code. Now, the tracking code is going to allow you to create a data stream. Now, when you create a data stream, essentially think of it as your website, Google Analytics. You are going to create a data stream between the website and Google Analytics. This is essentially what we're going to do by adding this tracking code. Now, this tracking code will also give you a bunch of code. Now, for anybody that's looking at this to be like, wow, what is a global site tag, script, async, CRC, blah, 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 all of this code? Don't worry, you don't have to be a coder to understand this. If you are completely new to websites and completely new to Google Analytics, I would recommend that you get some help. And how do you get help without paying for it? You book into a free one-to-one mentoring session with Google, and we're able to help you this along the way. The reason I say this is because this is probably the most complex part, the most complicated part. But this website tagging, this bunch of code that you're currently seeing on screen, we need to put this code on the top of every single page, not the visible page, on the code of every page on the top within the heading tag. Now, again, for any of you who's be like, what is this guy talking about? Don't worry. This is the only complex part of getting it set up. And we've got lots of help to do this. So essentially what you want to do, this tracking code, you want to take this code and you want to input it on every single page in the code of what you would like to start tracking. Once we have that, there's also other ways to install your tracking code. If you have coded your website by yourself, huge kudos to you. You are amazing. Make sure that you just input the code as top on the top and you'll be set to go. Alternatively, maybe you're using a CRM, in other words, a CMS, a content management system. Maybe you're using WordPress, maybe you're using Squarespace, maybe you're using Wix, maybe you're using one of those website builders. Many of these website builders will have and integrated in the platform within the settings to help you set up with Google Analytics. There's many ways in which we can do this, but the only way we can help you specifically is if we know more information about your website. How did you create that website? What platform did you create that website on? Once we do that, we can start adding this Google Analytics, this tracking code more effectively. Then we're going to jump into the reporting areas. Now, this is probably the easiest way that I managed to approach Google Analytics was by understanding what are the different questions or the different, the dashboard has different reporting areas. Now, these different reporting areas, again, will be slightly different because these are currently UA. So this is the Universal Analytics Interface. GA4, it's going to be something on the lines of acquisition, monetization, retention, and users. There's one more. It's a little bit different. But let's just focus on this one for now. So when you're looking at Google Analytics with these 4 different tabs, what you're going to start to notice is that you have acquisition, you have audience, you have behavior, and you have conversions. Now, what did we speak about earlier? We spoke about something called the REEN framework, which was reach, engage, activate, and nurture. We're going to use those questions to guide our focus on where do we look in Google Analytics. So let's say, for example, we are Becky, and Becky wants to understand who our website is reaching so we can increase the reach. Well, the place that you would like to go is going to be the acquisition tab. And when you click onto the acquisition tab, there's going to be a plethora of information that you can learn more about what your customers are doing and where they're coming from. Let's say, for example, you're Vishal, improving my work experience and expertise in the digital world. Well, that's not necessarily going to be an objective that we can dive into analytics, but as a business goal, that's a fantastic business goal or business objective. So understanding these four main reporting areas. We have audience. Who are they? In other words, are they male? Are they female? Then acquisition and so much more information. Acquisition, where did they find me? Did they find me on YouTube? Did they find me on Instagram? Did they find me through organic listings? Did they find me through paid advertisements? We can start learning more about where our customers are coming from. Then is going to be the behavior. Now, the behavior is going to be, what are they doing once they get to your page? Are they spending more time on your homepage? Are they clicking on one product more than another product? Are they getting stuck at a certain stage of your customer's journey? Maybe during the payment page. Maybe there's something wrong there. Next up is going to be the conversions. Now, we won't be able to dive into the conversions today per se, because in order for us to have conversions, we need to set up goals within Google Analytics. But before you start learning more about goals, before you know it, we're going to go into GA4. So we're going to focus on the first 3, audience, acquisition, and behavior. With this, let's break down all those mumbo jumbo numbers. So we have what we call dimensions and metrics. So when we're looking at the data with Google Analytics, the dimensions is going to be the what. In other words, where is that coming from? So the first column is, what can we call a dimension? A dimension is an attribute of the customer's website. For example, if we find ourselves asking a which or a what question, it's a dimension. Some examples include device type, the city, the age, the gender. In other words, what is their gender? What is the device type? What is their city? Then we're going to focus on the dimension. Next up is going to be the metrics, which is essentially all the numbers. Now, the metric is the measure or count of something. For example, if we find ourselves asking how many questions or how many use this device, we're going to look at the metrics. So you have the what, as in what are they going to be using, what devices, what age, what gender. Then we have the metrics, as in how many of them are using those devices, how many of them are female or male. So understanding these two is going to allow you to approach it a little bit more effectively instead of just seeing a random spreadsheet with a whole lot of numbers. But let's break this down and go jumping back into the REEN framework. And as I'm going through this, remember, there's no such thing as a silly question. If you are lost or if I'm speaking too fast, tell me to slow down or ask those questions that you're looking for. But to use the REEN framework to ask the right questions. How are people finding me online? We might be able to come to Becky on this one because Becky's trying to understand the reach and where our customers are coming from. So we're going to be asking the reach questions. So in order to jump into the reach questions, how are people finding me online? Well, in UA, the cheat code, it's in red at the bottom. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Google Analytics. You're then going to click on the acquisition tab. Once you click onto the acquisition tab, you will then click onto all traffic. Then you're going to get the channels report. And everything that you see on the right-hand side, as much as you may have to squint and try to find those numbers, you are going to have the dimension and the metrics. The dimensions from a reach perspective is going to be, okay, is it organic search? Is it referral? Is it direct? Is it from social media? Is it from paid search? So that's our what. Then on the right-hand side, you're going to have the metrics and you're going to say, how many did we acquire and how many of those users came through organic search? How many of those came through referral? How many of those came through paid search? And you're also going to be able to break down those metrics specifically to users and new users. Now, hopefully you're starting to understand how amazing that is. If you can start to gauge between users and new users, you can jump already into the last phase, which is trying to understand more of how are we retaining our customers? How many keep coming back? So reach questions. How are people finding us online? Acquisition, all traffic, channels report. There we have it. Then once we have that information, what do we do with that information? Well, once we start to understand where our traffic is coming from and we identify the search terms that are driving organic traffic. So please keep in mind, within this tab, within this acquisition tab, Google Analytics is going to also tell you, hey, people are finding you through organic search using these keywords. Now, I get super excited about this because now I'm getting someone telling me what keywords people are using. When I look at advertising or when I look to optimize my content, I want to make sure that I use these keywords within my content and also within my advertising. So hopefully you're starting to see the value of this. Next up, look to improve links with your social media platforms. If you're not getting too much traffic from social media platforms, or maybe you're getting lots of traffic from YouTube, but not so much traffic from Instagram, how do we maintain YouTube's traffic, but improve Instagram? Maybe we need to improve the links. Maybe we need to have better call to actions, but we're using the information effectively because we're using that information to spread our time more wisely in areas that need to be improved on. Last but not least, develop relationships with referral websites. Let's say, for example, you're getting tons and tons of traffic from a particular partner, from maybe your partner's website. They're just coming and they're buying from your website. How do you develop that relationship? How do you find out a more streamlined way to get the customers that are coming from them and maybe create an affiliate program? Now, the list is endless and the opportunities are endless, but the focus here is to focus on what do we do with that information. So next up, we're going to jump into the REEN question of what are people engaging with once they find me online? So we've now learned a little bit more about where our customers are coming from, and we've also learned more about how we can use that information. But now they've actually found you, and they're actually on your website, and they're spending time on your website. But now we want to know a little bit more about, are they finding the information that they're looking for? So How do we answer this question? What are people engaging with once they find me online? Well, again, the cheat code is in green at the bottom. So you're going to go to Google Analytics. You're then going to click on the behavior tab. Then you're going to click onto the site content and then all pages. The reason we're doing this is because similarly, we're now going to learn more about how are your customers behaving on your site. So we get to learn a little bit more about the dimensions and the metrics. Now, specifically on this tab, when we're looking at behavior, the dimension is going to be the individual pages on your website. In other words, homepage, about page, contact page, product page, another product page. You're going to have individual pages on your website. That is going to be your what, the dimension. Then how many is going to be the metric. So in this case, it's going to be how much time did they spend on a specific page? You're also going to get bounce rates, and you're going to get really good information about how much time is being spent on that page. And if you learn more about what's been happening on this page, well, let's kind of jump into it. Because if you're learning more about behavior, what do we do this information? We now know what pages we have on our website. We now know the popularity and what's happening on those websites. How do we now use that information effectively from a business standpoint? Well, we're then going to learn which pages are getting views. So which pages are getting views, which pages aren't getting views. For the pages that are getting views, let's continue to optimize that. For the ones that aren't getting views, do we need to mitigate that page out? Do we need to improve that page? Do we need to improve the links? But again, hopefully you're starting to understand, instead of you looking at your website and trying to improve every little detail of your website, Google Analytics is going to allow you to start targeting and starting to improve your customer's journey and start to work on areas that need to be worked on. Next on, discover what is really engaging with your visitors. Of course, the page that does the best, in other words, you're getting tons and tons of traffic on the homepage or tons and tons of traffic on another page. How do we optimize that? Maybe you want to put some advertising on that page. Now, again, that's your choice. But if you're getting tons of traffic to that page, how can we build off that? How can we be more lucrative? How can we generate more revenue? Or how can we generate more traffic to a certain location? Or how do we provide more value? The list goes on. Last one is discover what we lose a lot of people at a payment page. This is super, super important if you have an e-commerce platform or if you have any form of payments on your website, because once they're going through the different phases, now I'll give you a simple example. Let's say we're all going to buy something off a website. We jump onto the website, we go to the home page. Then we have to click to the product page. Once we click to the product page, we then have to select the products. Then we have to add it to the cart. Once we add it to the cart, we then need to go to the basket. Once we go to the basket, then we need to make sure that the basket is correct. Once the basket is correct, then we add payments. Once we add payments, so on and so forth. Hopefully, many of us have done this already online, but by using Google Analytics, you can start to find out where's that bottleneck. Where do people get to and they stop? So in other words, maybe they add it to the cart, but then they don't know how to get to the basket. And nobody seems to be going to the basket because the link isn't clear. So again, this may not be applicable to your specific website, but I'm giving an example and hopefully giving a visualization of how your customers may experience your website and how you can see this and improve it. So you can learn more about the pages, discover what's really engaging, and improve any stages of your customer's journey using the engage, which is going to be asking that question: what are people engaging with when they find me online? So we've done the reach, we've done the engage. Now we need to jump into the activate. Now this is where the magic happens. This is where we start making money. This is when we start converting. This is when we get more followers. This is when we get more likes. This is generally when we get people to take action and activate. But how do we know which channels are driving the most bookings? Or how do we find out which channel is driving the most sales? Or how do we know which channel is driving the most likes on our page? Whatever that question may be, we want to jump into the acquisition tab. And you think, why acquisition tab? We already spoke about acquisition. Well, think of it. If we're trying to find out which channels are driving the most traffic, first we need to find out where the traffic is coming from. So within those 4 areas of reporting, remember we had acquisition tab, behavior, and 2 others. You want to click onto the acquisition tab. Once you click onto the acquisition tab, you're then going to click onto all traffic and you're going to click the channels. Now, we're going to get something very similar to what we saw from the beginning, which is the reach phase. However, we now want to focus on the far right-hand side. Remember, we had the dimensions, which is the what. In this case, is going to be direct, social media, um, organic search, where is the traffic coming from? Then we had the metrics, which is going to tell you how many of those were users, new users. What I want to draw your attention to is the far right-hand side of this table, which is actually going to tell you a little bit more about how many of those actually converted. So how many of those actually took action? They came from organic listings. In other words, they found you on Google search. They clicked onto your web page. They came to your web page. They found a product, or they liked a page, or they booked, whichever it is. Once they've done that, that will appear on the far right-hand side. And hopefully this is going to come back to what Becky was referring to, which is understanding who our website is reaching so that we can increase the reach. You will not only understand where your customers are coming from within this tab, but you'll also learn more about if those are coming from this location or this channel, how many of those are actually converting? Really, really useful. Now, with that, what do we do with this information? Well, you have the information about where they're coming from. You now know that there's a lot of people coming from organic search, for example, and they're purchasing or they're booking. Now, what do we do with this information? Well, number one, you can identify which referring sites are driving conversions, because we all want to have traffic to our website. Let's face it, that's what we want. We want more eyes on our website. We want more people to buy from us. However, there may be people or partners that are driving tons and tons of traffic. Let's say, for example, the month of April, your partner or someone, a referral website, drove like 1,000 people to your website, which is phenomenal because you'll see your Google Analytics go crazy. But you'll also notice that maybe with only 2 people bought out of the 1,000 people that came. So the 1,000 people that people referred from another website, only 2 people bought. Maybe we want to iron out that partnership. Now, as much as we want traffic, we want valuable traffic. We want traffic that is actually going to convert. So by understanding this activate phase, we can also learn more about which referring sites are driving good traffic, which ones are driving not such great traffic. Then you can look out for underperforming very rare referring sites and considering reviewing the partnership. So during this phase, it's really just really beneficial information to understand where people are coming from, where people are buying from, mitigate where we're getting lots of traffic but no conversions, and improve. Even if we get a small amount of traffic from a location, but they're all buying, how do we improve that moving forward? But the main focus here is that you now get the insights as to where that traffic is coming from. Now, last but not least, we're going to jump into the nurture phase. This part is super, super crucial, but many businesses and charities seem to overlook this because we're normally quite sales driven or just focused on our strategy. Are my customers happy to leave a review? Are my customers coming back? Are we retaining our customers? That's a question that we need to ask. Now, remember, this is the final phase of that framework, the nurture phase. So last but not least, we're going to jump into the nurture phase. How do we do this? Again, cheat codes in yellow at the bottom. So conversions, in other words, we're going to go to the conversions tab. Previously, we went to the acquisition or the behavior tab, but now we are focusing on the conversion tab. Now, on this particular one, as well as monitoring reviews on your site like Google Business Profile, which I highly recommend that you drive as much as possible, and Facebook, to answer this question, this website has been set up for the key points for their sales funnel as a series of goals. Now, in order for us to have these conversions set up, we, as users of Google Analytics and our website, need to set up these goals in order to get this information. Now, again, this is going to get a little bit more complex. However, if you struggle with this, please book into those one-to-one mentoring sessions. And there is so much online training about this, especially with GA4, in other words, Google Analytics 4 coming out. Once you've got that up, you're going to think to yourself, okay, are my customers happy to leave a review with me? So we're going to go to conversions, e-commerce, and custom reports. Once you've done that, what do we do with that information? Are my customers happy to leave a review? Well, you can get genuine feedback from people who know and who have bought your products. In my eyes, and if you've been to any of my trainings and watched any of my videos, that's pretty much all I talk about is who is your customer? How do we learn more about your customer? Who is your user? But then You'll also be able to respond to all your reviews, good and bad. And you can try different ways to encourage purchasers to leave a review or what works best. Do more of that and do lots of it because we want reviews to build up credibility and just to get you in a good situation where people find you trustworthy and will keep coming back to your business and hopefully create some brand ambassadors about your business. So we are wrapping up towards the end now. I want to see if there's any questions or queries. We have about 9 minutes or so. So this is the opportunity to ask myself and Anthea any questions or queries that you may have. I think the main point that we need to bring across here is that Google Analytics can be incredibly overwhelming at the beginning. But once let me just jump into questions to see if any questions, pop it into the chat while I'm chatting away and while we're doing a quick recap. We'd love to know if you have any questions. Maybe you're getting struggled to set your own Google Analytics setup. Maybe you have any random questions, pop it into the chat because we've got some time. But just a quick recap to get the best out of today's session and make sure that it's actionable. Number one, we spoke about asking the right questions. And I say this to anyone that's new to Google Analytics, because if you just jump in and not knowing much about it, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're probably going to get discouraged and probably just going to leave it. And that's not what you want you to do. So what I recommend that you do is that you ask the right questions. First and foremost, find your objective, specifically your objective of why you are using Google Analytics. Are you looking to drive more sales? Are you looking to get more people to know about you? Once you've determined what that objective is, you can then approach Google Analytics in a more effective way. Once you've got that objective, I highly, highly recommend that you use the REEN framework: reach, engage, activate, and nurture. This was the best fundamental way to approach Google Analytics. Then you can break it down to those 4 different phases of reach, engage, activate, and nurture. Once you have that in mind, there are many, many different tools to get insights on your business and your activity online, whether it be through social media, whether it be through your website. If it's going to be through Google Analytics, please keep in mind that Google Analytics will be completely useless if you do not drive traffic. So for any new users that have a website and have not set up Google Analytics, it's going to take some time. Please don't be discouraged by that. But what is important is that you have your website, you got Google Analytics set up, you got your tracking codes on the pages that you would like to have tracked. And then once you've got that set up, your next focus is to focus on your marketing. And that's what I'd like to jump into next. So for those who are new, set up your Google Analytics account, get that tracking code on your pages on the ones that you'd like to have tracked. And then what you want to do is focus on your marketing. In other words, how do we now drive traffic to your website? Once you've driven traffic to your website, we can start understanding more about where people are coming from. So once you've got that set up, I highly, highly recommend that you jump back into the Google Digital Garage. The link is in the description below. Find the Writing for social media strategy, or the digital marketing strategy. Specifically, the digital marketing strategy. The reason being is the digital marketing strategy will touch base on 6 main marketing channels, which will be search engine optimization, search engine marketing, email marketing, content marketing, and social media marketing. Almost forgot that last one. But then by using those channels, you will then drive traffic. By driving traffic and putting all those efforts in your marketing strategy, you'll use Google Analytics to understand how are your efforts working. After 30 days, you can evaluate and find, well, I spent so much time on YouTube, but I didn't get much traffic. I spent so much time on Instagram and I got tons of traffic. And you can start to learn from your insights and start improving your efforts in your marketing channels and in your marketing in general. But sometimes, again, this can be slightly overwhelming. So I do recommend that you book into those free one-to-one mentoring sessions. Myself, Anthea, and many digital experts are ready and waiting to help you. All you need to do is sign up, g.co/UK mentoring. You got a full hour. All I do recommend that you do is come with an objective, very similar to this workshop or this session. Come with an objective. Why did you set up this one-to-one? Are you specifically on Google Analytics? Are you specifically on social media? Because we can only do so much within an hour. If you don't get what you need within an hour, you book into another one-to-one and you keep going until you move forward with your business. But I'm going to see if there's any final questions. I don't see any questions. There is one. I think Anthea has answered it. On Google Business Profile, what does the green chart mean again? Oh, the green part was the direct. So in other words, the green part was how many people found you directly, either searched you by your exact name or searched you by your address. and of course the blue was through discovery. And I think Anthea may have answered that already. Please let me know if you have any questions, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I'm pretty much done. I can keep talking for days, but what I'd love you to do is don't get overwhelmed. When it comes to Google Analytics, make sure that you just take your time and start with an objective instead of getting overwhelmed. Myself, Anthea, and the team would love to have your feedback. And remember, I told you about this at the beginning. Why do we ask for feedback? It's a very similar process of what we're doing with Google Analytics. But when it comes to this feedback, we're going to take this information from you, our wonderful audience, and learn from it and move forward. So please go ahead and pop in your feedback at goo.gle/digital garage feedback. And it would be awesome if you like this. Take a screenshot of this session, post it on social media, and say what you've learned. And make sure you hashtag the Google Digital Garage. I'd like to say a big, massive thank you to all of you for hanging around for the full hour. Just to put this in perspective, the average human attention span is close to 8 seconds. Some even say 3 seconds. The fact that you've managed to stay attentive to this very end is phenomenal. I'd like to say a big thank you to Anthea for moderating today's chat. We've got a couple of questions coming in. Looking for the great starting. So Becky, are there mentoring sessions for people outside the UK? And currently, in terms of the Google offering, they are specifically for small businesses and charities in the UK. But what I can mention to you is that there is another offering. What I do recommend, all you do, Becky, is jump into Google and type in Digital Boost. Digital Boost is another one-to-one platform that is internationally known, and there's mentors from all over the world with different expertises in many different areas. So what it's called Digital Boost. Amazing initiative, and they'll be able to help you as well. But please come back to many more Google Digital Garage sessions. But without further ado, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of you. A big thank you to Anthea. Make sure you look after yourself. Make sure you look after each other. And I would say bye for now, everyone.